Hello and welcome to our 2020 iFarmiVote video series. Today I'm joined by Jason Shaw, Republican candidate for the Public Service Commission's District 1, the Southern District. Welcome, Mr. Shaw. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Before we kick off our discussion, I'd like to remind our audience that as a nonpartisan organization, Georgia Farm Bureau cannot and will not tell our members how to vote. Instead, our hope is that this video series, paired with additional resources on the iFarmiVote website, will allow for our members and the greater agriculture community to make informed decisions as they head to the poll this fall. This video series will feature our Public Service Commission candidates, and we've made the same opportunity available to each individual pursuing office in those two districts. Mr. Shaw, thank you again for taking the time to join us today and allowing us to get to know you a little bit better. Let's get started.
Okay.
First off, we'd like to get to know you. Could you tell us a little bit about where you're from, your education, background, that sort of thing?
Sure. I'm from a small town in South Georgia called Lakeland, Georgia, which is Lanier County. My family's been here for several generations. We've also been farming for several generations here. I live in the edge of Lowndes County between Lakeland and Valdosta now on a farm with my family, my wife Katie, and our two children, Ann Harvey and Slayton, who are 12 and 8. And like I said, we've been here a long time. I went to school in Athens at the University of Georgia and graduated in '96 and came back home and started helping again at the farm and also joined our family business here. We've got an independent insurance agency here. Proud Farm Bureau member, and so it's really a special opportunity for me to be able to have a chance to talk about my background and our agriculture background and to all the Farm Bureau members out there.
Very good. Do you currently hold a public office? And if so, how long have you held it? And have you held any offices prior to this one?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I'm on the Public Service Commission now representing District 1. I was appointed by Governor Deal, so I was honored to get appointed and to be chosen for that January the 3rd of last year is when I was sworn in. Before that, I served in the House of Representatives representing my 4-county district down here since I was elected in 2010. So I served 4 terms in the House. I was the chairman of the Rural Caucus, so I worked a lot with Farm Bureau and forestry and all our other friends out there in those type of legislative issues. I was known as a passionate advocate for rural Georgia. So I've taken that same passion into my position at Public Service Commission, and now I'm seeking re-election, and so it's a busy time.
It is a busy time. Election season's ramping up for sure. As the state's largest and strongest voluntary ag organization, I'm sure you're familiar, Georgia Farm Bureau was founded back in 1937 to serve as a legislative voice for our farmers, both in Atlanta and in DC. So that being said, ag is obviously the lifeblood of our members and the livelihood of many of them. The Public Service Commission, while not tied directly to agriculture, does influence each citizen in the state, similar to agriculture, as Georgians pick up the phone, turn on the light, that sort of thing. So let's get into a few questions about the PSC and its impact on rural Georgia in particular. You mentioned you're currently serving on the PSC representing District 1. During your tenure there, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
Well, first of all, I'm proud that we've got a good commission. I've enjoyed working with all of my colleagues there. Last year was my first year on the commission, so I was doing a little more listening than talking there the first 6 months or so. There is a lot to learn. I was familiar with the commission, but at the same time, after I was started working there the first of last year, I realized that there's a lot more involved than I thought, and it's very important work. It's not really something that a lot of people follow as much, but we affect the bottom line and the pocketbooks of every single Georgian, and we affect our farm families in a big way. And my accomplishments are, first and foremost, I'm happy that we've been able to keep road rates competitive and below national average, and we've been able to work with our utilities to keep our reliability sound, and we've all come to expect that in Georgia. A lot of other states are struggling with that reliability, and we've done a lot last year to move the needle with regards to renewables and solar. I was happy to support what we were doing with solar. It's helping rural Georgia and rural communities. But also I took the lead on a biomass motion to carve out. So we're expanding our biomass generation in Georgia, which is good for our forest industry as well. So I'm proud of those accomplishments and the ability now to work more on broadband as well. That's a passion of mine. I actually live on a farm where we can't get broadband, so I know how important it is for my kids and all other children and families out there. So it's been a real struggle during this pandemic. So I feel the same pain that a lot of other rural Georgians do, and it's a passion of mine. And we're doing a lot right now with broadband as we speak.
Very good. You've probably kind of touched on this with what you just said, but what do you see as the most important responsibility and one of the greatest challenges of the PSC in regards to rural Georgia? Obviously, broadband is something at the forefront of a lot of people's minds right now.
Yeah, broadband is I mean, it's the number one issue, and it has been for a while. When I was in the legislature and chairing the rural caucus, we started that conversation, and it's a tough issue. There's not a single, solution out there to fix it. It's everything. It's financing and so forth. But, the legislature this year has teed up things for us to get more involved in broadband. That was kind of a letdown when I got on the commission to realize that, we didn't have as much to do with broadband because, anybody can get in the market. FCC regulates it to an extent. But the legislature has passed House Bill 244 dealing with the EMC pole attachment fees this year, which is a part of the broadband equation and the issue there. So we're just getting started with that case. It's going to be a difficult case, but broadband is by far the number one issue for rural Georgia. It used to be an economic development issue for rural communities, but now it's much more than that. It's truly a quality of life issue for our citizens.
We just kind of touched on my next question with bridging that divide and the rural broadband issue. So I'll move on to my question after that. What are your thoughts on the role that solar energy plays in the state and energy production and the economy? And should we be seeking to increase the amount of solar energy that we're producing?
Well, we have increased the amount of solar in a large way. Last year, when I first joined the commission, the first major case was the IRP case, which is the Integrated Resource Plan for Georgia Power, which every year we have that, every 3 years rather. It's a 20-year plan forecast for energy needs with a 3-year update. So we had a 6-month case that concluded last summer. We added 2,210 new megawatts of solar to the Georgia Power system. That's basically nearly doubling the amount of solar there now. So you're going to see a lot more solar in rural Georgia. So it's all about having the right diversity mix. Solar is playing a major role in that as with other renewables such as biomass. But you're going to see 2,000 new megawatts of utility scale solars. The solar rates have come down. They're a good deal for ratepayers. The distributed generation, the smaller scale side, we added 210 megawatts there. 50 of those with the customer sided program that many in your industry have participated in. But yes, solar plays a huge role. By 2024, we're estimated to have 22% of the Georgia Power system will be driven by renewables, mostly solar. And that's a lot. I mentioned having the right diversity mix is critical. So I'm not saying that you're going to continue to see this amount of new solar coming online, because we're also seeing a good deal for ratepayers. Is obviously the natural gas prices have come down, which is helping ratepayers as well. But you're going to see a lot more solar. Here's the deal with solar in terms of rural Georgia. It's been really good for our rural communities. It's been good for landowners that have given them an option for some of their properties and a good return on their, for them. It's just another tool in the box, so to speak, for landowners if they're fortunate enough to win the bid with a partnership with a developer. But it's also been a win-win for our rural communities with regards to our tax base, because many times you're able to take a piece of property that was obviously in a conservation CUVA or FLIPA program, and you take it out of that and you put it into solar, and then the rural community gets to tax it based on the value of all that infrastructure in place. So you've seen some counties like Twiggs and Taylor and Mitchell and Brooks and others that have really seen a huge boom in the local tax base, which has been huge. I mean, because rural communities struggle with regards to tax base. Let's just face it, we don't have the tax base from sales tax since the Walmart and now the Amazon mentality that we once had. So anything we can do to help the tax base helps all of us as landowners with regards to our tax situation, because Lord knows we don't need property taxes going up more. We'll see more family farms being sold. So solar's been great, but just keep in mind that having that right diversity mix, you can't get too heavy in anything. It's about diversity. If you end up with too much solar, then you can end up like California with rolling blackouts and all like they've had recently. So it's all about that diversity mix. And my colleagues before me have done a great job of moving solar forward. We are well known in Georgia as one of the leading solar states. And I'll add that we've done it without all the state subsidies, zero subsidies. So it's a true free market competitive situation, which is a good deal for ratepayers.
That's neat. I visited a solar farm, I think in Jeff Davis County, maybe. And that was the first I'd seen. It's pretty cool. You're always learning. I've been on many farms, but not solar farms. So it's kind of cool. What is the importance of competition when it comes to the Georgia natural gas and telecommunications industries? Do you believe we have sufficient laws in place to support competition in these areas?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier about natural gas and how competitive it is now, which has been a great deal, especially for our poultry producers, because they use a lot of natural gas. So they've been able to see a lot better, a lot more money going in their pockets as a result of these decreased natural gas prices. And we're trying to work to expand those pipelines into rural Georgia. And we've done a lot of that in the last year. We're able to do that through our Universal Service Fund. I know I've helped a lot in, you mentioned Jeff Davis County. I was over there last week and looking at a pipeline expansion there that's benefiting several industries. And, I got stopped in traffic for a while there, but it was a good problem to have because it's natural gas going into rural Georgia, and we're doing a lot more of that across the state. The telecom side is a deregulated market, and I don't see that changing for any of these technologies. But yeah, we've got a very competitive system in Georgia for our utilities, natural gas, telecom, and our energy providers.
Great. How does the PSC protect Georgia citizens, and how can our consumers play a role in the PSC process? That being said, how can the commission balance its duty to serve Georgia's consumers with its financial needs?
Well, I mentioned the IRP process. I think that was in '91 that the legislature created that process, the integrated resource planning. So in the past, our role with the utilities was mostly financial, but thanks to the IRP, it allows us to take more of an active role and have more of a say-so on how they do that. So I mentioned, we talked about the solar process. The way we were able to steer more solar into the Georgia Power Grid was through that integrated resource plan process, which also allows not just the commission to take a more active role, but all of the other intervening parties, the environmental groups, the solar groups, municipal groups, even the federal government participated in that process through the Department of Defense. So there's a lot more going on than you would think with regards to our ability to affect change with regards to these things we're talking about. So there's a lot we can do, but at the end of the day, our main priority is finding the right balance and striking the right balance between our utility providers and the consumers. We represent the consumers. Our number one goal is to try to keep rates in check and make sure we remain competitive with other states, which we have. We're the number one state in the nation for business. We would never have that designation without that competitiveness with our utility rates and the reliability we've come to expect. We know when you think about being pro-business and having that number one state designation. Obviously, the obvious reasons are our workforce, our first-class workforce, transportation infrastructure, and things like that. But like I said, we would not have that designation if we didn't have competitive rates and reliable service.
Awesome. Well, that kind of wraps up my PSC questions. But before I let you go, as I mentioned, and as you're familiar, Georgia Farm Bureau is an ag organization, so I can't let you go without asking some ag questions. First and foremost, what is your favorite Georgia grown commodity?
That's an easy one for me. I was with my good buddy Robert Dickey last night in Macon, and I was speaking, so I'm no knock on him and his peaches, but my favorite is Georgia grown extra virgin olive oil, and there's a personal reason for that, because my brother and my cousin and I were the first to produce extra virgin olive oil in Georgia. We started a company in '09 called Georgia Olive Farms, and we've since those days, we've created a small industry within the ag community producing this, and now there's around 6,000 acres of high density olives being grown in South Georgia. When I got on the commission last year, I realized pretty quick I couldn't stay as involved in that company as I had the prior 10 years, so we sold that company in April of last year, sold the brand. I'm still involved a little bit, but I certainly am proud of that. And if you haven't tried the Georgia grown olive oil, I would encourage you to do so. I would put it up against anything. You know, I mentioned these natural gas prices and how we've become more truly dependent on our own American natural gas system, but I can say the same thing about olive oil now. We have become dependent here in Georgia by growing our own and not as dependent on that Italian and Spanish olive oil.
Do y'all sell that out of state too?
Yeah, but the majority of it is sold in the Southeast. So Charleston's a good market. We do a lot of food service, or they do now. The farm, I didn't sell the land. I leased it to them in the mill. But yeah, I mean, the Atlanta, the Charleston, Savannah, those areas are the prime markets. As the industry grows, there's been 5,000 new acres of production added over the last 4 years. So you're going to see, as that comes online, the ability to expand that market outside of the current area quite a bit, hopefully.
The reason I ask, I used to live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I remember seeing it there. And I thought it was cool because I just moved up from Georgia and there's a little bit of home there. So that's neat. As you mentioned, we've got an abundance of Georgia grown commodities. Olives are probably not one that many people would think of off the bat. But there is one that is kind of taboo in terms of how you pronounce it. So I want to know, do you pronounce it pecan or pecan?
Oh, Lord, that's a fun one. Well, Mr. Bill Rockmore from here in Lakeland, where I'm from, who started the Patent Seed Company, or he married into the family and then started the Super Sod. They always had the most pecans of anybody here locally, so obviously you hear me say pecans. But he always said that about the pecan or pecan pronunciation, he had the best comeback I've ever heard. He said it depends on if you're buying or selling. If you're buying, then he's going to tell you, we have the best pecans that you've ever tasted. But if you're selling, he's going to say, well, those look like some pretty good pecans.
That's what I've heard. I always grew up calling it a pecan, and I don't know what that says about me, but well, I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me today. Our iFarmiVote initiative, it goes beyond our active farmers in our rural districts and reaches every citizen who's impacted by agriculture, which, as you know, is our #1 industry. So thank you. You're kind of in a unique position in that you are a farmer and you're also on the PSC. So you get to see a little bit of both sides of that. But thank you for representing Georgia's needs, both in ag and in our utilities. And we wish you the best of luck through the rest of your campaign.
Well, can I just close by just encouraging everyone to just make sure you go vote, regardless of who you vote for. That's one of the biggest rights we have as citizens of this great country. So I'd encourage that, and pay attention to these races, Public Service Commission races. A lot of people don't follow what we do there, but it is extremely important for everybody in this state that turns a light switch on every day. I mean, we're affecting that in our work at the commission, and don't ever hesitate to reach out to us there if we can ever help.
We appreciate it. Thank you again. And be sure to visit our website, iFarmiVoteGA.com. We'll have your video up there. And we've got some other resources for folks to make sure they're registered to vote and that sort of thing as well. So.
Well, great. Well, thank you and have a good weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.